Hello, I'm Kendra Wyckoff, Executive Director of Peace House, and I want to warmly welcome you to our biggest public event of the year. Although I wish I could connect with each of you in person, I'm so grateful and honored you've chosen to join us today from the comfort of your home. Many of you are longtime generous supporters of Peace House and have given of your time, talent, and resources over the years to help break the cycle of abuse in our community. You are aware of the importance Peace House has played in a community hub for victims of domestic violence. Some of you may be new to what Peace House does. Thank you for taking time today to learn about our mission and services. Today, we present a program that the Spring Luncheon Committee has worked on for months that intends to give you a rare inside look at the breadth and depth of services available behind the doors of Peace House. We want to give you a sense of the kinds of programs Peace House offers to victims residing in shelter or living in the community as they move through their journey from crisis to hope. In early March 2020, reality settled in for our organization that the global public health crisis was quickly becoming a serious concern for our country and our community. Back then, we knew very little about the virus, what strategies or practices would mitigate the risk of transmission or an outbreak on the campus. And we faced challenges in sourcing supplies that would help us to do so. The hardest part in leading the organization during the global pandemic has been managing the unknown. We were deeply concerned about the unintended consequences of the mandates, such as the stay-at-home orders to protect public health. Home is not always a safe place for everyone, particularly victims forced to stay home with their abusive partners. During the pandemic, the usual channels for respite, support, and connection for victims of domestic violence have been diminished or completely cut off, increasing the risk for abuse. We had to quickly problem solve a shift in our service model from nearly 100% in-person services to virtual opportunities that would still support increased safety and accessibility to programs. When I look back to the early news reports and discussions about COVID-19 a little more than a year ago, it was hard to imagine then the ripple effect we would experience and continue to see today. We now know that interpersonal violence is a co-occurring public health crisis to this pandemic. A recent survey measuring the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on women in Utah revealed that 9% of women who responded reported domestic violence or an increase in domestic violence in their home a concern. We at Peace House have seen the effects of this firsthand, with a 50% increase in calls for support and help as compared to last year, and the emergency shelter program has been at or near capacity throughout the pandemic. While we've experienced challenges, we've also witnessed the incredible resilience as many survivors have worked with advocates to establish plans to escape abusive relationships or to navigate their safety while continuing to stay in their homes. However, we predict that the long-term impact of the COVID-19 pandemic for victims of family violence and abuse will be more significant than for the general population. Victims will continue to need emergency assistance, and we anticipate that our support services will prove especially crucial during the next couple of years as victims navigate housing insecurity and financial hardship. We are pleased to report that community campus operations have been uninterrupted throughout the pandemic, and we've had no known cases of COVID-19 among clients in our residential programming. Peace House has worked creatively to allow for social distancing in the residential areas in the community campus and has added cleaning and sanitation protocols to protect the health of staff and clients. We've also implemented the use of telehealth, which has had the benefit of extending our reach and increasing survivors' accessibility to services like therapy and case management. We've worked hard to support the health and safety of everyone on campus, and those additional safety measures have come with increased costs. The pandemic has significantly increased demand for services in a short period of time, but the resilience of survivors and our work to end domestic abuse in the face of overwhelming challenges is not new. Your support has been and will continue to be critical to ensure that our life-saving and life-changing programs are available around the clock. Thank you for committing with us to provide essential services and support to victims of family violence and abuse, and for creating opportunities for safety, healing, and empowerment for families in our community, especially during such a demanding and challenging year.
Hi, I'm Kim Fisher. I'm an investigative journalist and supporter of the Peace House mission. I have done too many reports on tragedies in the state of Utah, And I know domestic violence can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, or socioeconomic status. I know domestic violence is happening right here in our community. We're going to share a video with you, and it features a 911 call made by a child. Now, we want to warn you that what you're about to hear is disturbing.
Can you get to the police, please?
Okay, we're going to be there. What's going on?
They're having a fight because this has been going on forever and ever.
How's he hurting her?
He made some red marks on Mom's
Where did he make the red marks on?
neck. Oh my God!
What's the matter? Is your
No one should ever have to go through that experience. The Peace House is not only serving those who have experienced domestic violence, they are working to break the cycle so the statistics change. In 2020, Peace House received nearly 6,300 domestic violence-related calls for help and support. The organization provided more than 4,000 nights of emergency shelter. 1 in 3 women in Utah will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 3. For those experiencing abuse, Peace House is a place where they can come and heal and find their greatest potential free from violence. Please join me in watching this presentation about the Peace House and the difference it's making in the community.
Peace House is an organization that is here to support our community and those who are experiencing interpersonal violence in their homes. So Peace House offers wraparound services, which include an emergency shelter for individuals or families to go to when they're not safe at home. We offer support with our legal advocate in navigating some of the court system. We have case managers to help connect them to housing, and we have therapists who help them in their emotional healing. By having a whole team that's working with them and helping to support them in all areas, it allows them that space to start the healing process and to be able to learn and grow.
My name is Florence, and I had a good family, good upbringing. After high school, I met Leo, who eventually became my husband. He was 5 years older than me and very charming, had a good job, handsome. Quite honestly, I was kind of swept off my feet. I guess I chose not to see. He really kind of wanted me all to himself. And he expressed the feeling that if I really loved him, that I really shouldn't want to see my family and my friends. I became increasingly dependent on him, and he seemed to see me differently. He began the name calling and called me things like a loser, or physical abuse started when I was pregnant with my first child. He slapped me and said he should never have married me, that he'd be better off without me. A lot of times I thought about leaving, but I had no way to support my daughter. Where would I go? Then we had a second child, and the baby just would not stop crying. He tried to grab the child from my arms, slammed me into the wall in doing so, and I dialed 911. That's when the police told me about Peace House. I knew I had to get away for the safety of my kids. And it gave me the courage to do that because I had a place to go.
The first thing that they experience in their first week here at Peace House is that they can finally feel safe. So they'll say, oh, I'm finally sleeping, or it's so nice to feel like I'm seen and that someone hears me. So a lot of our residential clients are dealing with like that safety piece as the biggest thing. And then once we equalize that and stabilize them in some safety in our residential services, then we can move towards working on other things. My role is connecting them with resources and providing a lot of accountability for what they're working on. So finding sustainable housing, finding support in that housing, transitioning into that. So if they've always been living with a partner who's abusive or in a situation where they were being financially supported, working towards employment, working towards confidence to work in that job and move towards that life that's separate from all of that violence and abuse. The reason that empowerment is so important is because we're not just providing a short-term support, but we're providing their own understanding of what's next and how to move forward. The client is the one doing the work, and we're providing the supportive structure and framework for them to succeed. So being able to tell a client, like, you're actually the one that did this, is so powerful. It's like one of the best parts of my job.
Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm here to talk about my experiences in life. And honestly, I grew up with a mother who was always being abused, and I didn't know that there was anything else. I just thought, this is what life is like, because I didn't have anything to compare it to. And it also makes you, as a child, become really withdrawn. I was pretty darn young when I met somebody, and at first my boyfriend seemed sweet and nice, and it was probably less than a year that I was dating him, but he was hitting me. And yet I stayed with him for a long time. And then I ended up having a child. My love for my child made me realize I gotta do something different. Not only is this physically painful, it's emotionally painful, and what if I'm putting my child in jeopardy? I also realized things weren't going to change with this person that I was with. I did file a restraining order, and I was led to the Peace House. I don't think we would have lasted if we hadn't found help from the Peace House. They made me understand that I'm not alone.
What Peace House provides more than anything is not just shelter. The shelter is a temporary, it's an emergency situation. But what Peace House provides is the holistic approach to domestic violence. It's not just the spouse, it's the kids, it's the family members, it's the dog. It's everything that goes with domestic violence. It's finances. How does somebody get out of domestic violence and pay for their own rent? How does somebody take their kids in an environment of dad drops them off at school and mom picks them up? How does that dynamic change? Peace House provides the big picture. It's a whole campus of dedicated professionals that are going to teach and support and mentor and provide a situation where you can get out of domestic violence.
That's such a relief for folks coming in to know that they can leave that situation and still have access to food and to cooking, which for some is so healing, and they don't have to worry about how they're going to feed themselves and how they're going to feed their family. If they need to walk out with just the clothes on their back, they can come into Peace House and we can provide them with shelter and food and clothing. We can help them with gas to get to work. We're really able to meet them exactly where they're at to keep them safe. Our facility is open all day, every day. We have someone on staff who is available to talk, available to provide resources, available to help survivors leave their situation.
Hi, my name is Charles, and I'd like to talk to you about my last relationship. We moved pretty quickly for, most of the relationships that I had. I mean, we moved in together after a month, and she just convinced me that her outbursts were based on things that I was doing. It was hard. It was always my fault. She started to get a little bit more violent with her outbursts. She would punch me in my arm, and then a couple of times she just really flew into a rage. I mean, she even tried to choke me, and she kept telling me that if I stay, she said it was over and that it would never happen again. And 2 days later, she'd do the same thing again. And I was afraid that nobody would believe me, you know. I mean, it did come down that my parents finally asked me about her, and they kind of encouraged me to get my confidence to say no more. Nobody deserves to be abused. And, you know, I started going through therapy, and I started to reach out to organizations that would help in this situation. I wasn't the only one that had ever experienced, you know, an abuse in this way, and that it could happen to men. And that really gave me confidence, is going to a place like the Peace House. They had people to help and say that you're not alone. I think that that's probably what helped me the most.
We really try to create a very accessible programming so that we really can tailor to the needs of each person as they're coming in. And oftentimes those needs are different and really ever changing. And, you know, Peace House is changing along with it. We were the first domestic violence organization to serve male survivors directly in our residential support programs. And domestic violence is very complex, and the needs of the folks that we see, you know, is very complex, and each person is coming with their own story. When somebody comes to Peace House, they're not getting one advocate. They're getting a group of highly trained, highly invested folks to work with them towards addressing the unique needs that they have. The people that walk in are not the people that walk out. They're different, and that's a beautiful transformation to see. People who are feeling confident, and they're feeling secure, and they're feeling excited themselves. It's an incredible gift, and I feel lucky every day to be a part of people's growth and journeys.
Hi, my name is Ilana Spitzberg. I'm a volunteer board member and co-chair of this event. I've been a therapist for over 40 years. Wherever I have lived, the community is so extremely important to me.
My name is Kate Margolis. I'm a volunteer, board member, and co-chair for this event. I have worked as an advocate for domestic violence victims for the past 20 years. I feel blessed to have worked with such a great organization and so many passionate and generous staff, volunteers, and donors.
We thank those around the world who have brought the issue of domestic violence out into the open during this pandemic. COVID-19 has opened the eyes to so many people just to the magnitude of what domestic violence is about.
We hope that you have a better understanding of how Peace House walks alongside each survivor. In addition to our important work with victims, each year Peace House reaches as many as 20,000 students in Wasatch and Summit County through prevention and awareness activities. These programs teach about healthy relationships, but more importantly, they start the conversation about how to end abuse. After attending these programs, children are enabled to come forward with their family's stories. Whether you are a survivor, a family member, a friend, or someone in the community who believes in the basic rights of living a life without violence and abuse, we need your help.
These stories remind us how cruel, how menacing domestic violence can be, because it happens at home. Just imagine the one place where you should feel safe. The abuse comes at the hands of the people who are supposed to love you. Escaping domestic violence is not only associated with a great deal of fear, but also incredible financial and legal challenges that often leave the victims of abuse feeling trapped. Everyone who has joined us here today understands that our work is not yet finished.
The bottom line is this: nobody in America should live in fear because they are unsafe in their home. No adult, no child. And no one who is suffering abuse should ever feel that they have no way out. We as a community need to make sure every victim knows this: you are not alone. There are resources available to you, and in your time of greatest need, Peace House is here for you. And as a society, we need to ensure that if a victim of abuse reaches out for help, we are there to lend a hand. We thank our committee for their tireless work creating today's program, and we thank our amazing staff for the work they do each and every day. We couldn't be prouder to be a part of this effort, and we are so grateful that you took the time to join us today.
I'm Leslie Morgensteiner. I'm the author of a memoir about surviving domestic violence called Crazy Love, and I also did a TED Talk on why victims stay in abusive relationships. And it's such a pleasure to be speaking to you right now. Thank you for supporting Peace House, and thank you for taking time out of your day to learn about domestic violence, because awareness is how we end it. Abuse thrives only in silence. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to tell you about today that underscore the incredibly important work that Peace House is doing. When you're a domestic violence victim, asking for help is incredibly hard, because everything about abuse encourages you to stay silent about it and to be very strong and to solve all of the problems yourself. And often you feel like you're protecting your abuser, and that if you have children with the abuser, that you're protecting them as well. And the truth and asking for help can feel very frightening, and as if you're making yourself extremely vulnerable at a time in your life where you already feel so vulnerable. And abuse doesn't feel like it's something that is happening to millions of people around the world at the same time that it's happening to you. It feels intensely personal, as if you're the only person who has ever been in love with an abuser and the only person who has ever been hurt in this way. And if you had asked me when my Ivy League educated, Wall Street employed abuser, at the same time that he was holding guns to my head and pushing me downstairs and terrifying me every day, if you had asked me if I was a battered wife, I would have told you no. That I was a strong, smart, independent woman in love with a troubled man, and that I was determined to help him. So that's why it's hard to reach out, and why you need a place like Peace House that really understands the complex dynamics of abuse in order to get free. And I want to tell you about the first person who believed me and the first person who helped me. It was many years ago, and it was the day that I had to go to family court to get my temporary restraining order made permanent. And I was sure that the judge was going to believe my husband. I didn't think there was any way on earth he was going to believe me. I knew exactly how charming and persuasive that man could be. And what happened to me that day is that a domestic violence advocate showed up in family court. She had a file on me, she knew my story, she knew my name, and she helped me. It turned out that I didn't have to talk to my ex-husband or to the judge. That advocate took care of me and got me my restraining order. And she was the first person who believed me. And she was the first person who made me feel understood and validated and seen, and like I was going to be okay. You can't rescue an abuse victim. You can't get us to see the danger that we're in before we're ready. And you can't just swoop in and say, I'm going to make everything okay. But what you can do is when we're ready, you can give us the knowledge and support and counsel that we so desperately need. It really does take a village to leave an abusive relationship, and that's what Peace House is doing, is providing that village. And that's what you're doing right now too, is providing that community, the community of support that every single victim needs in order to transform our lives and turn around the worst situation that most of us could ever imagine being in. And I'm particularly honored to be here this year because I'm actually going to be at Peace House in person next year in 2022. And I'm going to tell you my whole story then, the good, the bad, and the ugly, how I met and married and fell in love with a person who I thought was my soulmate, who I thought was the greatest man on earth, who turned out to be somebody who was intent upon destroying me and killing me, and how I too was able to get out. So thank you so much. I was never able to thank that domestic violence advocate who helped me in court. I was never able to thank the police officers who helped me and all of the other people who helped me. So instead, I'd like to thank all of you who are here today supporting Peace House. Thank you.
I can't imagine if we did not have a Peace House in our community. It is such a strength and such an integral part of this healing process for survivors to know that there is a whole community behind them that is there to support them, there to lift them up, that cares about them. We recognize all forms of violence, and we believe that each person has a right to be free from all forms of violence. So regardless of what that might be and what someone's story is, there's a place for healing here, and we're here to support those individuals.
Everybody has the right to live a peaceful, healthy, happy life, violence-free. We have a saying in law enforcement to serve and protect. I believe this Peace House has that same mission. They want to serve and protect the citizens of Summit County and those especially been touched by domestic violence.
At this time, we ask you to please consider making a contribution. We really need your support to ensure that our programs continue to stay strong and our work to break the cycle of domestic violence continues. Our community really needs you. Your generous donation will go far.
If you would like to make a donation today, go to the chat box and click on the link for Spring Luncheon page. There you will find a donate button. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, Sally at peacehouse.org, or for more information, visit our website, peacehouse.org.
Thank you so much for attending this year's Spring Luncheon. We are so grateful for your ongoing support of domestic violence victims and their children. We look forward to seeing you in person next year. And as always, your ongoing support changes lives.